Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Lucky Seacon, and I am so excited. I'm having a conversation today with the one and only Tara Lipinski, an Olympic gold medalist who really has been a huge advocate for the fertility community. And I'm excited because she has agreed to join me today to talk a little bit about my book, The Lucky Egg, that is coming out in almost a week from now, which is insane to think about. I've been working on it for the last 2 years, and it's really something that's close to my heart. It's the biggest project that I've ever done, the most important project that I've ever done. And I'm excited that she is wanting to talk to me about it. Let me just add her in here 1 second. Tara a lot over the past few years, but I'll let her share how we became friends because I think it's an amazing story. Hi, how's it going?
Hi, how are you? I'm a little under the
I'm
weather.
doing
Sorry.
great. No, all good. I hope you feel better.
I know. I know. I'm doing good. We're still being real lazy. The new year starts tomorrow. So.
Yes, totally. Well, I'm so impressed with you for agreeing to do this live. I am going to be having a ton of amazing conversations throughout the week. Obviously, I'm launching my book, which I'm very excited about. I was just introducing you and why we have even gotten together. We've teamed up on so many different projects now, it feels like. And you are just such a fantastic person to talk all things fertility.
Oh.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. I think a lot of people know about it, but I just want to bring anyone who doesn't up to speed.
Yeah, I my journey was long, is long. I'm still sort of on it as we are still trying to build out our family beyond our daughter. But it was a 5-year journey just to get to our daughter, and it was something that I definitely wasn't expecting to really ever encounter. I thought, oh, we're just gonna get pregnant, do it the way everyone else does it, and that's it. And then I realized very quickly that it was going to be a long journey with lots of obstacles. And, we started IVF just for insurance. So it wasn't like we were trying or we had issues. We just thought, with the way that my schedule is with the Olympics, and I was in my mid 30s, that it was a good time to go that route. And we were lucky enough to do that. And we went to, we're out in Los Angeles, so we went to California Fertility Clinic and Partners and started, and then it took 5 years. So it was overall, like my horrible stats are 8 retrievals, 6 failed transfers, 4 miscarriages. I had 24 procedures in that time frame of 5 years, 2 endo surgeries. Um, and then we finally moved on to surrogacy with our own embryos, and we were very lucky in our first journey to to have it go smoothly. And it was a beautiful thing for me, just because for so long I really was competing with myself, if I'm being honest, of trying more cycles and losing embryos and miscarriages. And then finally I realized that what was important is to get to the family part, and I'm so glad I did. It was the only regret I had in my 5-year journey, was waiting so long to choose surrogacy. But we have our beautiful baby girl, and now over the last 2 years we've been on our journey to bring a sibling into the world, and that's definitely posed some challenges. And so I've definitely been through it and walked almost every aspect of, infertility, IVF, miscarriage, loss, all of the things, which is why we've been working together, over the last year. And yeah, I'm just lucky, though, to have met so many incredible people to have helped us and to support us, and then
Yeah.
also just this community that, what is it? Worst club, best members. So that's how I
Yes.
feel.
No, it's so true. I think what's remarkable when you told me your story, I mean, the way we initially met was that you had tagged me in a story, and
Mhm.
it was this big thing that you came out and said, "Hey, over the past 5 years, you will have no idea what I've been dealing with."
Yeah.
And you came out with your story, and it was like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just shocking. I think eye-opening. Fertility issues are the great equalizer, And I think it showed to people, it really humanized you as a celebrity and as a person in the limelight, showing your vulnerable side and, just opening up about your journey. And I had no idea that you were following me and
Yeah,
utilizing resources.
I had a secret Instagram account. So because I kept my story private for so long, it was just I really isolated for I became like a hermit for 5 years. Obviously I worked through all of these things, and my close friends and family knew, but nobody else knew. And then eventually when I tagged you, my husband and I decided to do a podcast together, about just to document our entire journey. And that's when I tagged you, because for 5 years I was following all of these different accounts, just to feel connected or to find answers or to find people that had similar stories,
Right.
that
How did you
it's
stay
so
mentally
isolating.
strong? How did you stay mentally strong through it all when you kind of were a little bit isolated? I mean, you put on a brave face and people didn't know you were going through this for 5 years. It's a long time.
Yeah. I don't know. It was the hardest thing I've done. It was harder than the Olympics, and becoming, even making it to the Olympics, let alone winning an Olympic medal. The type of dedication and sacrifice and obstacles and the losses and the falls. You would think that I would be very prepared for this, and I definitely wasn't. It was so hard, not only physically. For me, it was just the emotional, part of it, the mental part of it, the having to try to find hope, and then just loss after loss or failure after failure, and um, really believing for a long time that it was not going to happen. And yeah, I think everyone has to deal with it in their own way. I don't think there's any secret to it. I think for me, I had a very specific, process through it. And I do think I relied on a lot of my athletic background of,
Yeah.
finding that grit or finding that hope, or just putting in the work of putting one foot in front of the next and getting back in the game and making the phone call and going to another appointment. But I definitely, I think I relied on some of those tools in my toolbox, but it was hard. Most of the time I would give myself 2 weeks to just pity and do a pity party and lay in bed and say, we're never going to do it again. And then I would wake up one day and be like, no, I really want to keep trying.
Yeah, it's all about the resilience, but it's something that has to come from within. And I talk about that a lot in my book about different mental health strategies to try to make yourself more resilient because in so many cases it's about staying on the journey. I mean,
Yeah.
just hearing your stats are staggering and a lot of people can't fathom doing that, but it's not like you're like, I'm signing up to do 8 retrievals and all of this other stuff.
No.
It's like you go through it and you fall down and you get back up again.
And you just keep
What,
going. I mean, I think that is the one. I'm glad that I did it. That is the one piece of advice I could say is like, I think you'll know when you're really done. I think if there's ever that doubt or there's ever that what if, it doesn't hurt to just try to find the right support and try to find the right team and give it another go. And then when you're done, I think and I think I
yeah.
just was never there. I always say like I you could wear me down, but just never wear me out. Like I just kind of always had to get back in there. But I think everyone's journey is, obviously so different.
Unique. No, for sure. Something I talk a lot about in my book and on here is there's this huge fertility knowledge gap. So if you had to compare yourself like at the beginning of the journey versus 5 years later, I mean, how much do you feel like you had to learn, or did you go into it feeling like you knew some of the stuff? I mean, what was your experience?
Oh, I knew nothing. At all. I mean, I feel like the last time I like was like probably in like second grade and like
Yeah,
had
it's all
no
classic.
idea about. Truthfully, like it is sad, and I think that's what needs to change, and that's why it's so incredible to have people like you and doctors like you and books like yours to help educate people. Just even if they are approaching IVF or they're trying and they want to learn more, and it gives you not only the knowledge, but it gives you a platform that then to advocate for yourself if things don't go perfectly. And I had to really, like I said, I was on Instagram trying to find answers.
Was that your main source of information, or did you have
Yeah, which
other places?
I mean, obviously, I read all the go-to books. I think I started with, like, I think everyone does, like, it starts with an egg, and then I
Yeah,
I went from there. But I when you get into the questions that you want answered when it really comes to IVF, of why a cycle fails, or grading, or embryos, or genetics, or you know whatever it could be, male factor, I think that you just don't know. You show up at these appointments and you have a quick
yeah,
ultrasound, and then you're kind of like thrown into a protocol, and then it doesn't go right, and you get a call and you're like, oh, it didn't work, we'll start again. And then you don't, and it's obviously so costly, and not many people can do cycle after cycle. So that's where
yeah.
I really try to advocate, and try to help the community now to not only back themselves up with the knowledge, but to be able to advocate for themselves, to make sure that if they're getting a cycle or two, that they're getting the most out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I talk about that a lot because I do think that people tend to be, all of us tend to be very naive at the beginning of
Hmm.
something new. And there tends to be a lot of trust in saying,
Right.
okay, I mean, I'm just going to trust the experts, which I think is good. You want to trust your
Right.
clinic and your doctor. But I think all too often it feels too overwhelming to learn the things that are needed to really be comfortable with the process. I think people are like, okay, I'm going to trust the doctor, but I don't think that many people anticipate how out of control they're going to feel in the midst
Yeah.
of it all, or getting those results back, because it's like you just don't have a handle on it. Like, as a physician and as someone who's been a patient, not just in the realm of fertility, but like in other aspects,
Hmm.
I've always really cared about every medication I put into my body,
Yeah.
like how does it work?
Yep.
But the layperson doesn't necessarily need to know all of that detail. But I do think this is
Yes.
such a unique type of experience and journey that if you put the effort in to learn about your body up front, you're going to feel much more in control and less anxious and less confused. And
Yeah,
so it's a
it's
win-win.
power. It's just knowledge is power. I mean, as
Yes.
silly as it is, it really is, because it takes some of the anxiety out of it. I would look back to
Yeah.
my first few cycles, and when, our first egg retrieval failed, when I got those results, in my mind, I just panicked and thought, that means I'll never have a baby, because I
Yeah.
had no understanding of what any of this meant, or what the next cycle could bring, or how it all works. And then, once you learn more, obviously, then I think it reduces some of the anxiety.
Hmm.
And it also gives you, there's so little, for me, I mean, I am a very type A person. So there's so little control that you have over this, right? Like,
Right.
obviously, you trust your doctor, but I think there's also something about fertility that's maddening, that there's just like that, I don't know, percentage that's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know what it, like, nobody knows what it, like, how it's going to happen. It's
Yeah.
just this,
Yeah. You think it's this high-tech process,
yeah,
and you're like, well, we don't have all the answers.
we don't have
That is a
all the
huge
answers.
reason. Yeah, and that is actually, a lot of people think I named my book The Lucky Egg because of my name. It's like, a cute title.
Right,
But I actually think that it goes so much deeper, because once we as fertility doctors acknowledge all of the unknowns and the things that we
right,
can't explain,
right.
the stories everyone's heard in hopes that happens to them, like the person that's had a million failed cycles and then somehow gets pregnant on their own. There's so many examples of things that just we can't put a box around it and use science to explain it. And there is an element of randomness and there is an
Mhm.
element of luck to it. But obviously, we do have science on our side. And now we have access to more resources and information than ever. So it's about putting your best foot forward, but also saying, you know what? It's okay to be hopeful and it's okay to say anything can happen,
Yeah,
and to mentally prepare for the unknown, as
yeah.
silly as that sounds.
Yeah, and I think that, I think what's interesting about IVF is there's so many misconceptions about it, and that I had. I thought, oh, I'm, doing this, and it's going to, work, because that's what IVF is. And I think, and then for many people, they go, and it is, and a smoothish process.
Yeah.
It's hard to begin with in any way. Obviously, you're putting yourself through something physical and emotional, to begin with, but there's a lot of people that end up in sort of the group that I was in, where it really is just one issue after another, and
Yeah.
sometimes not a lot of answers, and that is very anxiety inducing, and it completely changes your life. And I just had so much fear that I lived with on a daily basis, because I really did want to bring a baby into this world. And I
Yeah.
didn't, like I said, for years, I really thought it wasn't going to happen because we had so many failures. Anything that could go wrong was going wrong.
Hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how different it feels? I know you're in it right now,
Yeah.
but
Still, I know.
going through it for the first time, going through it and kind of maybe having the assumption of like IVF is like, the thing that's going to get you there and it's a guarantee. A lot of people feel that way. And then kind of educating yourself with all the resources you could get your hands on, going through the process firsthand and, learning from your lived experience. And now going through this next process, do you feel like having all that knowledge and experience accumulated you're wiser going into this now? Like, does it help?
Yeah, it definitely helps. And like I said, I have an understanding of what to expect. I have an understanding of what my body's doing. There's more, I think when you don't know, I think there was a long time that I just when the retrievals weren't going right and we had so many questions about my endometriosis and all of these things. There was a time where I really, like I keep saying, I thought it was just impossible. So having no hope is not a way to walk into IVF. You have to have a little hope. And I
Yeah.
think by
Yes.
having um either reading a book like yours or doing what I did and just doing hours and hours of research of just understanding the basics of IVF or the
Yeah.
basics about how our bodies work when it comes to this process, it just is a bit of a stress reliever. And then it
Yeah.
also, like I said, it gives you something that when you go into that appointment, I found myself in the beginning just walking out and not knowing anything and just being so scared and having all these questions in my mind, but almost feeling silly to ask them because I knew I didn't know enough. Um,
Yeah.
but then, by the middle of it, I knew so much that I was really able
Yeah.
to ask. And
Right.
I think that little bit of control or that little bit of feeling like you're part of the journey with your entire team is not only empowering, but it makes you, part of the process and
Yeah.
relieves some of that stress.
Yeah. And I think everyone has a tendency to think that their questions are stupid. I mean, the number of times patients will start any question off by apologizing first. I always feel so bad that that is a tendency, and it's just human nature to feel insecure. And whatever you can do to combat that, including educating yourself. And I'm a huge believer that, everyone should read books like the one I wrote, The Lucky Egg, in their 20s, but anywhere they can get good reliable information. I think if everyone in their 20s could treat that as like a health class 2.0, because
Yeah,
truthfully what you said, like learning about this in grade school, in biology, that's a lot of times the last time people have talked about this or
right.
thought about this. And I think showing up at a fertility doctor's office and at that point starting from scratch and learning the basics about ovulation and how to track properly, I think it's the wrong time. Obviously, for some people, they have no choice. That's just where they
Right.
landed. But I hope we can change that in the future, because anyone who's learned anything knows that you don't retain information and learn as well when you're anxious or feeling stressed out. And if
Well,
you could just
think,
come in
like I
with
hope
that,
more, yeah, I hope more people, find you on Instagram and read your book because I do think like, even if you're obviously there's so many of us in the midst of it, and like you said, we're further down the line. But if I picked that up somehow when I was in my early 30s or late 20s, I would have read it and been like, oh, okay, I am going to go and freeze my eggs. I am going to be proactive and take certain steps. And I think even if I knew more at the beginning of the process, I think it would have been a shorter journey for me. I think I didn't understand my endo diagnosis. It took me a while to get that surgery. I think I would have moved on that quicker. I think that
yeah.
I would have moved to surrogacy quicker. So I do think that the earlier in the process that you have the information, the better.
I'd love to hear your advice for people who are in the thick of it and they feel maybe dismissed or not heard, because you have been a huge champion and advocate for this community. What have you learned about self-advocacy and what are your best tips?
So I mean, my best tips are that, and this is just, unique to my journey and what I learned and what I felt was important to bring to the table. And I think that the advocacy part of it is important because I think it's like you said, there's so many people in your office saying, I'm sorry, I don't know, should I ask this, should I not? And I think that, you know, obviously you choose your doctor because you trust them and you know that you're in good hands, but no one's perfect and
Hmm.
some things could be missed. And you could bring up a conversation that could open up another conversation that could take you on a different route or a quicker route, or you just don't know. And I think the more, again, the more research you can do, the more understanding of the process that you have, it gives you that ability to go into those appointments and advocate for yourself and to ask and to really tell your goals and your wants, because I'm sure you have so many patients, you don't know exactly my story, what I want out of it, my timeline. And I think um I just want patients to feel that they can do that. And I think for me also, the surrogacy portion of it was so huge. And I was losing so many of my own embryos that are so hard to make, and I was so lucky to make them. Again, that is my biggest regret. I just wish that I turned to that sooner. And I know that
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many issues when it comes to how it's not accessible for everyone. But I do think
Yeah.
the emotional part of it is really hard for a lot of people to wrap
Yeah.
their minds around.
Yes, there's
Uh,
huge mental blocks when you think about, consideration for alternate paths, whether
yeah,
you're talking like donor egg, donor sperm,
right.
gestational surrogacy. One huge thing that I felt strongly about when I was talking to my editor and setting out to write this book was I wanted all journeys to be highlighted. And they were like, well, how are you going to do that in less than 100,000 words? And I said, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I think I still did it in a very thorough way, but I do feel like all too often it's very like IUI, IVF, and we need to really highlight other people's journeys. And for the reason that you stated, we have to reduce the stigma and the mental blocks. And maybe it's not for everyone, and maybe it's not going to be something that everyone does. But if you know about it, then you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, I mean, I got a message on Instagram the other day, from someone who was like, "Oh, my daughter was born this past week, and she's here." But again, I had the smallest part of it, but like because of your podcast, your journey, your story about surrogacy, I just wasn't able to emotionally take that next step till I
Yeah.
heard your feelings around it, and those kind of stories make me so happy because there is
Yeah.
a world where she was like, I was so close to losing all my embryos and I couldn't make any more. So
Wow.
it's, I think there's so many different stories, journeys, aspects of IVF, and alternate ways to build a family. And the more that people talk about it, the less taboo that subject will be, and the more comfortable
Yeah.
people will feel. And hopefully that helps cut down on some of the agony that's part of this journey sometimes.
Something I've heard you say over and over, and someone just actually wrote about it in the comments. They said, telling everyone else who's trying to conceive, we feel validated because an Olympian said that infertility was harder than the Olympics, because I feel that so much. And I love when you say that. I feel like I've done so many things with you now where I've seen the expression on people's face when they hear you make that statement because they feel seen.
Yeah.
And I think you don't even have. You have no clue how much you have done for this community. You even for me, like hearing your story really was eye-opening to me because it really goes to show you never know what someone is going through. And I think you've done prompt them to make changes in their own conversations that they were originally feeling stuck and too afraid, to take that first step. What would you say to anyone who right now, it's like early 2026, everyone's thinking about like what they want to do, taking stock in their life, and what do they want to set out to do in 2026? What would you say to someone who feels stuck and afraid to pick up the phone and make that call to the clinic or to explore their options?
Right. I just would say that, from my experience, looking back at how long it took and how that, and that's something I didn't understand either. You go, you have a failed cycle, but then it takes a month to get your cycle going, and then you have to line it all up, and then if you have a miscarriage and you're waiting months, like it's not like, oh, I can just like make a doctor's appointment and boom 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 have a baby in a
Hmm.
year. I mean, you're looking at, a significant amount of time, and I think that the sooner you can start, even just to get that baseline appointment, just to again get more information, and knowledge about your specific situation, then you have just, more information to make decisions upon. But waiting, I think, is just probably, and I understand that, something that you do out of fear.
Yeah.
But I would just say, from someone who went on a 5-year journey, I think that this process can take so long, and especially as we know, it is, we're on the clock a little bit, so every year
Mhm.
things change, and you want to get in there as soon as you can.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know that it's Sunday night and we've been talking for a while, so I want to wrap up. But I'm here because I sent you my book. Like, well, people should get this book. It's available for pre-order now. It's coming out published on Tuesday, January 13th. But pre-orders to me matter because they help that there is demand for this book, and it helps widen the impact and get it into in as many people's hands as possible. And really, truly, the reason I wrote it and my mission is I want to get to a point where people walk through the door of my clinic and come to have a conversation with me feeling less scared, more in control, and they already have the basic knowledge and they can come in and we can start the conversation here so they can get the most out of their time with me. Why do you think people should read this book? And I just want to again thank you for being so supportive of my work and doing
Of
everything
course.
you're doing for this
I mean, I
community.
love you, Lucky. I mean, we've obviously worked together over this past year, and I've got to see, you in the midst of, all these question and answer sessions and interviews, be able to talk so eloquently. And, I think it's not even the knowledge that you have, because of course, you're an incredible doctor, but I think it's your compassion and your empathy towards, I mean, you've gone through it yourself, but towards the patients that are really in the thick of it. And I think that's what, makes the difference. And I instantly, when I found your Instagram page, felt that, and it put me at ease. And I felt like I was learning something from you. And I think your book is just something that, whether you're trying, you're 5 years into IVF, or you just want to know more about your body, it could change the direction of your life, in a real way. So I think that that's why it's important. And
Thank
it
you.
is
Thank you for
it
saying that.
yeah, and it is something that, I wish that I had. I was, when I was so, oh, where do I go? What's wrong? Where are the answers? Just um, to have that knowledge would have really helped me, and helped my stress levels.
Well, that's really what has driven this mission. And every chapter, everything I do, every post, every chapter I wrote of this book is guided by the need and where I think there is need. And a lot of that is driven by the community here who sends me DMs. And I see like 5 DMs in one day about the same topic. I'm like, okay, there's a knowledge gap there. And so thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today and who watches this even after the fact. I hope that this really makes an impact and helps people. I know even if it makes an impact, the fraction of what you've done, like that will make me so
We're just like
happy.
one person, right? Like when I got
Yeah,
that Instagram message
yeah,
the other day, it was like so incredible just to
yeah,
think that, and you're doing
yeah.
that
It's
on a
very
daily basis,
motivating.
not even just like
Totally.
obviously in your clinic, but now at the book too. So
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I get to know you, and that our paths crossed.
Yes. And they'll continue to cross. And I'm sending you so many positive vibes. I know everyone on here is. Good luck in 2026 and let's stay in touch. I love you so much and thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye. Take care.